Um, on the, I yield to no one in my admiration for the enlightened U.S. statesmanship after the Second World War and the way in which enlightened American statesmen sought to win the peace after the victory of the war, contrary to what we all did in 1918. It was remarkably enlightened, and we in Europe owe a great debt, not just for the lives of your servicemen and servicewomen who twice in the last century intervened to help preserve freedom and democracy in Europe. We respect that. And I also yield to no one, John, in my respect for the involvement of the US in the process of European integration and in keeping peace and freedom on the European continent after the war. I accept that. But I think you do us an injustice by not accepting what we also did ourselves. And the extent to which we built a new way of doing business in Europe, a new business model for Europe, which was in contradiction to the way in which we had managed the first half of the 20th century, which led us to two world wars, which were European civil wars, to be frank. That's how it started. They were European civil wars which mutated into global conflicts. And we put an end to that. And I think the European Union played an important part in that. I think I made it clear in my opening remarks. I was not claiming exclusive responsibility for it, but I think it played a very important part. And by the way, it played a very important part elsewhere. It's a mistake to focus only on France and Germany. Hugely important. I pointed out how it brought reconciliation between Ireland and the UK. And with respect to Hugo, I absolutely agree with a lot of what you said about the history of Britain, but you will remember that as an Irishman, I see your history from a slightly different perspective. And I don't think you always stood for freedom or the right of independence, because we spent 700 years trying to get out from under the yoke of the United Kingdom. And when we did, joining the European Union was the ultimate expression of our independence. It was not the sacrificing of our independence, it was an expression of our independence that we would finally be able to join a community of nations on the European continent that would work together in harmony and with respect for the equality of individual countries and respect for culture and the language and our differences. It is unity in diversity. It is not a pluribus unum, which is what you have built here in the United States. So I think the European Union has achieved a huge amount. With regard to the fact that we have problems, yes, indeed. I've been here for 3 years. The US has some problems. I could list it if you wish. I don't think it's my job to do that as the EU ambassador. I'd rather have to say what a great relationship we have. But look, who doesn't have problems these days? The issue is how do we deal with them and how do we confront them? And I think the European Union has actually done a very good job of dealing with our issues over the last 10 or 15 years since the financial crisis came. We face multiple challenges. I agree with you, but ultimately we find better solutions working together than trying to solve them separately. And that's the lesson that we have learned. Now, how we do that precisely, by the way, it is not over-regulation. One of the things I get criticized for when I travel around Europe, I'm accused as someone in Brussels as being a deregulator. People say, oh, why do you want to dismantle all these rules and everything? Because in fact, in building the European Union, what we have built is a single regulated space. So yes, we have European Union regulations, but by and large, they have replaced 28 sets of regulations, which created artificial barriers between our countries. So I don't think that the European Union, I think the European Union has a good future. If you look, support for the European Union has peaked in every other of the 27 member states and is now significantly, even in some countries, in 70–80% of support. I think our citizens get the message that we can do things better, working jointly and sharing and pooling some sovereignty in other areas, while at the same time retaining our distinctive individual national characteristics and a large degree of control over our national space in terms of the economy and the type of society we want to build. And I respectfully, Desmond, I think, yes, Italy is an issue, but I well remember President Barroso telling me that at the height of the financial crisis, he convened 20 chief economists from banks around Europe. And at the end of the breakfast, he asked them, how many of you think the euro will still exist at the end of the year? Only one person put up their hand. 5–6 years later, the euro is still there. It's not going to go away. We will make it work. We will find solutions to our problems. And Europe is still one of the best places in the world to live. We have a very high standard of living, high standard of education, high health care. Europe is a good place to live, and that's perhaps the source of our greatest problem, which is the migration and the refugee asylum, because people actually want to come and live in this wonderful European Union. Thank you.